We can't lay out the future 100% and say, here's what it's going to look like. None of us can. But your best chance for success is to find the opportunities as they show up. Don't sit on them, act on them. They're not all going to work out. And here's what happens in a coaching session. People go, well, what if it doesn't work out? Here's the absolute 100% guarantee. If you do nothing, nothing will happen. You can guarantee that each and every time. You may have to do a couple things to figure out what actually does work. But if you're going to try to do something and stick with it long enough to see if it works, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, maybe it's a step to the next thing. But action is going to be the way out of doing whatever it is going to be. You got to be actionable. You got to be willing to try something new. You got to be willing to have it not work out. You got to be willing to sit there and feel the failure and decide to do it all over again.
The strategies that built your business can stop working overnight, and no one warns you when that shift happens. Recognizing it and knowing what to do next is where real growth starts. My guest on today's show is Nick Musica, a former SEO consultant who spent over 2 decades helping companies rank and grow online before pivoting into executive and career coaching. After watching AI upend the content and marketing world he'd built his career on, Nick shifted his focus to helping people navigate exactly that kind of disruption. In our conversation, we trace his path from an early corporate SEO role through building his own consultancy and into coaching leaders and career changers through uncertainty. We talk about the habits that quietly stop serving you, the difference between passive income myths and real business ownership, and why soft skills like intuition and presence are becoming more valuable, not less. Nick shares a personal story about grammar school choir that reframes what resonance actually means when making decisions. We also get into practical ways to stay sharp and human as AI reshapes how we work. It's a great discussion that will have you walking away with a clear sense of which of your habits are worth keeping and which are quietly holding you back. So without any further ado, on with the show. Nick, it's so great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Stephan. Good to be here.
So you've been in the marketing and actually SEO world for many, many years. So why don't you start by sharing your origin story, how you got into SEO marketing and how you ended up pivoting to what you're doing now.
Yeah. So I've been in the digital marketing space since I think it's 2003. That's the year that I give it minimally. And I was working for one of the babies of AT&T on a little skunkworks project. No one wanted to work on it. And someone was working on it out on the Long Island, and the parent company found out, and they said we want to bring it in-house. And there was 4 of us from the parent company in New Jersey that started to work on this project. We hired an SEO firm. I forgot about this. We hired an SEO firm for a 6-month contract, and it was $6,000 a month then for this retainer. And the first 3 months, it was either 2 or 3 months, this was the deliverable. I kid you not. It was a PDF of 4 individual web pages, homepage, about us, whatever it was. And they SEO edited the copy. And so it was minor copy changes, page 1, minor copy changes, page 2, page 3, page 4. And that was $6,000. And I brought it to my boss and I was like, this is $6,000. This is what they're charging us. And he goes, let's see what they give us next month. Okay. So the next month they send over the email. I get the email and it said interlinking or cross-linking. I forget what we called it back then. And I'm like, great. Like this is not. I never liked it. I never liked doing the work of interlinking. It just felt tedious to me. So I thought, fantastic. They're going to have the recommendations. I'm just going to go in, make the changes. Good to go. And what they gave us was a page and a half of best practices of interlinking. And I copied and pasted the document into Google. And what I got back, I can't say it was 1-to-1, but 80% the same. Here's what interlinking is. Here's why it's important. Indexation and crawling your website, blah, 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 all the things we know. And I said, this is $6,000. And my boss said, okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to call them up and fire them. And here's what you're going to do. You're going to go find someone to train us so we can figure out what we're doing right, what we don't know, fill in the gaps, and then we're going to take this work in-house. Cool. So I found Shari Thoreau. She came in for it was like a day or 2 training. And at the end of it, she goes, here's what's going to happen to one or both of you. She says, this happens every time I train someone. One or both of you is going to get a new job. And I've been through the annual layoffs of this company. I didn't want to be there anymore. And, so I'm like, why Why do you say that? Because it happens every time. And she was right. 4 months later, I had a new job, and I was doing a bunch of things at this baby of AT&T. I was writing the copy, designing the website, whatever marketing thing of the day needed to get done, had to get done. I was doing it. But then I focused on SEO after that, and did that for quite a while. Co-authored a book with Shari in 2009. Worked at NYU, taught at NYU for a hot minute in the summer of 2010, teaching online marketing, including SEO. And then in 2019, I started my own consultancy. I just had the itch to do my own thing, and I started it. And then about 3 years after that, you and I were chatting before we started to record. 3 years after that, I think it was 3 Novembers now. If you were to fast forward, November of 2026, ChatGPT became mainstreamed. Everyone and their mother's now using ChatGPT. And before that, we were writing a lot of content for folks, more specifically, human written content, blog articles. And all of a sudden, you 25,000 words a month, 50,000 words a month on busy months. And then all of a sudden, crickets. It goes quiet. Everyone decided it was way better to write vanilla, mediocre copy with this brandy new machine that's gotten better doing it. But at the time, it was terrible. But you could do a lot of it cheaply and quickly. And what no one ever came to me for was, hey, Nick, give me a lot of really cheap, poorly done content. They always have wanted a result from what I did, funny enough. But now the market shifted, and they just more was better. And now we have the result of that again. And I lost contracts, but what I also lost was interest in what I was building, which is terrible. It's not a job. You built it. You're responsible for it. Here's the lovely thing about self-employment: all the freedom of the world, all the responsibility in the world. Right? Like you are responsible for making what you're making. And I could have spun up products and services to make up the revenue, but I lost interest, and that was the hard part. That was really the hard part. So I started to see what was available for myself. What was I doing? What was interesting for me? And I was dabbling in coaching for years. Before I started my own gig, I had a team of folks, and I was working with them. That's a form of coaching, mentoring. And so I started to take a look at that more seriously. And so for the past 2-ish years, I still do SEO. I've been doing it for, like I said, since 2003. So people know who I am. I'll get a reference here and there. And those folks close easier because someone told you. For people who are running your own business or considering it, you can do all the marketing in the world. I'm not saying don't do all the marketing in the world. However, I will say, at least from my experience, the people who close are the referrals. 80% of the people who knock on my door, they close. Someone's told me to talk to you about a thing. Here's my problem. Can you help? I can. Let's go. It's sort of that simple. Versus, what can you do? Who are you? Do you have references? If anyone ever asks you for references, just say no. Walk away. They do not want to work with you. That is a clear indication they are not going to sign the contract.
Yeah. Or if they're interviewing multiple companies, that's
That's right.
that's not a good sign either. Yeah.
Yeah. They're more interested in seeing what the work could look like, smell like, feel like, than actually doing the work. If it's urgent, go do the work. If it's not, then maybe I'll see you in 6 months. So I started to dabble in coaching more. I considered, especially considering the SEO, that was the focus. But after ChatGPT came out, I was more interested in working as a coach in that realm. And you mentioned intuition at the beginning when we were chatting. There was one day in meditation I heard coaching, and I thought, I'm not going to do that. I'm not doing that. And it came up again. Okay, I'll go check it out. And I've been very lucky in my career to work with folks at the top of their game. Shari Thoreau, Bruce Clay, who recently passed, Steve Krug, Peter Morville, like the folks at the top of their game. And I'm like, what do they all have in common? They're at the top of their game, and they wrote books.
Yep.
Well, let me go find someone on Amazon, which may be not the best way to find someone, but I was like, let me go on Amazon and see if they wrote a book. And I find this book called Mindful Coach, and it's written by Doug Silsby. And I look him up, and Doug's off the planet, but his training is alive and well, and it's happening in Nashville, and in 4 weeks. And so that sort of took a lot of what I was doing and just made sense with it. Because I was dabbling with the Harrison assessment, it's a behavioral assessment, and I was doing intuition coaching, and some other various coaching along the way, story coaching. But finding Doug's book and that program just made everything in my world made sense from a coaching perspective.
So you took this program. You then started working with executives, and what sort of pain points are they coming to you with? Like things are very much in upheaval right now with the AI era, and there's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of fear and inaction because people don't like to make decisions when
Yeah.
things are pretty chaotic.
Totally right. So I mean, there's a few you hit on a couple things, but I would say the number one factor that I'm working with, the number one theme, the theme is the things that I've done stop working. However, I built whatever I built, just sort of stopped working, and I can't figure out why it's not working. So our habits, our go tos. The same five people that have built the company from 0 to 50 million. The number doesn't even matter. The number is immaterial. It's the pattern that continues to show up. Is what got me here is not going to get me to where I want to go.
Yeah.
And so there's this frustration that builds, and there's this spinning in individual operating systems that continues until we say what we're doing is not working. We need something different. And when you have exceeded, and we all have limitations, but when you've exceeded how you show up, whatever that means, that's the part that's different for people. It's really helpful to have an outside resource to help you understand what's going on, to create a different path for yourself, and to really here's one thing I hear repeatedly, and it's they're not venting sessions, they're coaching sessions, but people just to have space to talk and to get their thoughts out. Most folks don't have that. They're bouncing from meeting to meeting, from email to email, from problem to problem, to fire, and then the next day happens. So to carve out time to simply process and plan and have someone hold you accountable is enormous for a lot of folks.
Yeah. So how does one do that if they don't have a coach? Do they use ChatGPT or Claude for that? Do they take an online course, read a book? Like what? Not everybody is able or wants to hire a coach. So what's the do-it-yourself approach?
Yeah, so you can do it yourself. And here's what I would say, there's a bunch of things I've done by myself. Books are great, and they're great for learning. They're not really great for changing habits, they just don't contribute to it. They're wonderful ways. Online courses and books are wonderful ways to see, am I really interested in what I'm reading? Is there something I want to go deeper on? You can read a million books, but you're not going to be an expert in a million things. You're not going to change a million different ways. I've worked, I'll just say from my experience, when I've worked with whoever it was, and I mentioned some of them when we were chatting, whoever I worked with one on one, that's when there's been big shifts for myself. That's when I was able to adapt my perspective and see things in a different way. And then because of that, I was able to function differently and get a different result.
Yep. So I've had many coaches over the years, probably 15, maybe more. Yeah. So I'm curious if there's like a standout coach that you worked with in the past, but it felt like that was a season or that was a chapter in your life and now you've moved on. How would you leverage that coaching if you had, let's say, a year or 2 years worth of coaching with this person and you've got the recordings, but they're sitting in a Dropbox or a Google Drive somewhere. It's not like you're revisiting them on a regular basis. How do you bubble up the insights, the wisdom, the actionable takeaways from those kind of coaching sessions and make it applicable into the right here, right now?
Yeah, so I've worked with a handful of folks as well, and now and I still do. And when I'm in the coach's chair, typically what happens at the end of an hour is, so Stephan, what makes sense to move on in the next 2 weeks? We don't leave things in the Dropbox. We don't leave things in. Well, now we have summaries, more summaries of meetings that we know what to do with. But if we're not focusing on moving something forward, then we're having very expensive, non-productive conversations. So the whole idea is to get clear on what's going on. What do we want as the outcome? And if that's the outcome that we want, then what actions are we going to make to get us closer to that outcome? And when you rinse and repeat doing that for weeks and months on end, looking backwards, and I had someone say, I'm really astonished that we've done so much in this period of time. And it was little things every 2 weeks that we did. It was just little things, but the clarity and the action was the consistent thing over 6 months.
So let's play this out just hypothetically. You don't have to give any real names or anything, but let's anonymize this. Like somebody that maybe you worked with for at least 6 months, they're in transition. They need to maybe pivot in their career, or they're seeing a lot of layoffs in the organization. So they see the writing on the wall. They need to update their resume and sound really appealing because the job market is brutal, from what I hear. So, what kind of outcomes and actions are you having them take, and what comes from it?
I mean, the actions and outcomes are very broad considering the frame up. So it depends on the person. So if we're talking about, if I'm talking about founders, those folks aren't looking for a job. They're looking to see how they can expand their company. If we're looking at folks who are in transition, be it I got laid off from looking for a new gig, it's a time where you can take a step back. Hopefully your situation will support this, where you can start to give it some consideration around, what do I want to do? Do I want to go back into this situation or a similar situation? Have I been holding myself back? Have I been comfortable as a marketing manager where maybe I should have been the director 3 years ago? So these are some of the conversations that can happen. And out of those conversations, and some people may go, I don't want to go back into it. Also, I don't know what I want to do. Great. That's also a great outcome. Now you have a path ahead of you. It's not clear, but you know the direction you want to go. Versus there are some folks, and you see them all the time on LinkedIn, where I'm now a consultant. Sometimes, or maybe sometimes it's just I'm in between jobs. And so I throw a consultant shingle on top, right? So like to dabble in self-employment, I do not recommend dabbling in self-employment. That's something you don't want to do. Either you want to be self-employed or you don't. But to have your foot halfway on the gas of self-employment, you're not going to build anything that's interesting. The next interesting job that comes along, you're going to throw away whatever you're building. You're going to get a job, which may be fine. And so if your tactic is, let me be a consultant as a bridge, cool. But if you really want to go into self-employment, there's a bunch of different ways you can go through that without leaving a full-time job. You can get another job and still go, I know I said self-employment, but right now I need a paycheck. Great. But my goal is still self-employment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So different depending on who the person is showing up. The clarity around what you want is magical for a lot of folks. And then the commitment to go get it is something that I think most people have a hard time doing.
So let's get more specific. Let's say the hypothetical person is a marketing manager. They're seeing team members getting laid off, or maybe they just got laid off themselves, so they know they need to pivot, and they want to become their own boss. And by the way, I love this expression. I don't remember where I heard it from. I like giving credit when credit's due. But yeah, I don't remember who it was. But being self-employed is like a very expensive job, is the quote roughly. And the reason why they said that is because you are the hardest on yourself in terms of working nights and weekends and taking very little to no vacation time and just burning the candle at both ends for less money than you would probably get paid if you were doing the same kind of work working for somebody else. Versus if you were not self-employed per se, but more a business owner, then you have an asset that doesn't require your labor necessarily. You could have other people doing the labor and you are making passive income or maybe just tangentially involved, but not doing the day-to-day. So I love the distinction there because it helped me early on in adjusting my role so that I was not the bottleneck in many cases. I had for a long time a CEO, I had a COO. I brought in people that were as capable or even more capable than I was so that I could, relax a bit. Not that I wanted to coast, but that I just didn't want to have all that pressure. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's you mentioned a couple of things. I mean, one is self-employment, solopreneur, shall we say? And what you do in that case, you pretty much give yourself a job. you're not necessarily building a company. You're extracting yourself out of this situation, working for company X, and you have a job and you're doing all the things. Or you're building a company and you have certain people doing certain things. You mentioned a couple, and I started doing everything, and then along the way, when I was getting bigger contracts in, I would start to hire folks as 1099s. Everything's always been a 1099 for me. Um, to hire developers or writers or whatever the talent is that I needed to get something done. But if you can do everything in the whole wide world, but you will be working days, nights, and weekends, and not making as much as you're probably making now in a full-time capacity, for sure. You mentioned passive income, and there's been some folks I worked with on the coaching perspective who wanted passive income, and I love the concept, and I really don't think it exists as much as people talk about it. There's not much passive when it comes to that model. If and I've seen folks build things and then walk away from it with the expectation that it's going to continue to run and be successful. And that can happen for a period of time. And then here's what does happen from what I've seen. It simply falls apart. You need someone to maintain whatever it is. Passive income, you can buy stocks and bonds, passive income. But real estate's not passive income. Something's going to break. You got to get it fixed. Running a business, having a website, affiliate model, which was huge for decades. Not so much anymore because of AI and all the fun things that show up. You still need to market it. You still need to get eyeballs to it. Unless of course you're Forbes, but they've built a whole big machine around it. Now they can throw up a page about best in the whole wide world, 10 CBD products, and they can get a bunch of traffic to the page because they're Forbes. And there's other websites that can do that, but those are big money making machines. That's not the context that we're talking about right now.
Yep. So back to the hypothetical scenario, we got a marketing manager. He or she needs to pivot. What sort of actions is that person advised to take if they're going to go the self-employment or business owner route that will be not replaceable in 12 months because AI is advancing at a faster and faster clip, and it's like maybe ChatGPT or Claude is good enough for some copywriting, but not all of it, obviously. And a year from now, we won't be able to say that anymore. But we'll be like, wow, this is the best copywriter I've ever seen in my life. And it's ChatGPT.
It's possible. Yeah. And just last week, I produced wireframes from ChatGPT. And they weren't, you couldn't give them to a developer, but you could give them to a designer to redesign, to then give them to a developer. Absolutely. And copy is sort of the same thing. We may be going there very quickly. For marketing managers, a couple things come to mind, and this is not how a coaching session would work. But for this context, here's what I would say: you may be in a place where you have enough skills to be able to go sell those services. If you do, great. Find your niche, find or start someplace, and start to do that. If you want to break out of the mold of working for someone else, or you can start doing that when you have the full-time job. But here's what it comes down to. We don't know where we're going. Things are uncertain. So to be able to do your job better, faster, and get along with folks in the organization and being able to adapt quickly. And I think that's the biggest thing these days is the adaptation. Being able to adopt a different way of being able to adopt a new skill, adapt to the situation, or essentially what you're going to be saying is, give me what the dinosaurs had. I'll take what they had. And we know what happened to them. Right? They're just simply not here anymore. They stopped adapting. So our goal right now, for better or for worse, as things continue to shift and change, and keep in mind, the people at the top, even the folks who are creating the tools, don't know where we're going. They have no idea what's happening. They're just doing it like it's a product. But we can't lay out the future 100% and say, here's what it's going to look like. None of us can. But your best chance for success is to find the opportunities as they show up. Don't sit on them, act on them. They're not all going to work out. And here's what happens in a coaching session. People go, but how am I going to, well, what if it doesn't work out? What if it doesn't work out? Here's the absolute 100% guarantee. If you do nothing, nothing will happen. you can guarantee that each and every time. You may have to do a couple things to figure out what actually does work. But if you're going to try to do something and stick with it long enough to see if it works, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, maybe it's a step to the next thing. But action is going to be the way out of doing whatever it is going to be that we're talking about here. You got to be actionable. You got to be willing to try something new. You got to be willing to have it not work out. You got to be willing to sit there and feel the failure and decide to do it all over again. That's going to be the difference between people who go, oh my goodness, the thing's coming for me, or the people, whatever it is, because it was the internet at one point. There was a thing called for people younger in career. There was a thing called the Yellow Book and Yellow Pages at one point. People would look up businesses there, and that became a dinosaur. We're gonna continue to see this. There'll be new technology it's called disruptors that comes through and takes away and changes things, but it's just going to keep on moving and grooving. So the more you can adapt to whatever is coming at you and find something that's interesting, keep on finding something that's interesting for yourself so that you don't dread to go to work on Monday mornings. Find something interesting. If you can lead with that spirit of interest, then when the world throws you a curveball, and it will, life's going to get in the way at some point. That plucky spirit to be able to call back some of your resources, things you've done in the past, and your plucky spirit to move you forward, that can help tremendously in times of distress.
Yeah. And I imagine your take on things is very kind of mindfulness, meditation, intuition. That's what I get from our chat so far. And correct me if I'm wrong. And that's something that is irreplaceable in an AI era where you get guidance and then you apply that. Just a fun example from today. I was showing my wife a mock-up of a repositioning of my homepage, my personal website, stephanspencer.com, a repositioning more focused not just on AEO and SEO, but on AI consultancy and AI, like fractional AI advisory and things like that. And she's like, fractional AI advisory, yuck, whoever utters those words in a sentence, it's like, this is terrible. It's just a word salad. And she didn't use necessarily that phrase, word salad, but that's basically what it was in her mind. And she was right. I just was too, there's a expression, it's hard to read the label when you're inside the jar. I'm definitely inside the jar.
Oh, that's funny.
So she gave me some tough love on that. And then I wouldn't have thought to do this, but she took a screenshot of the page and a screenshot of another page that she knows about that's into AI training and they have a community. It's quite popular. 5,000 people in the community and paying members and so forth. And she took a screenshot of that homepage. And then she fed it to ChatGPT. See, I would have gone to Claude Design, and I don't get a lot of creativity out of Claude Design. Maybe it's my prompting, maybe it's the context isn't good enough or whatever, but I just wasn't getting a lot of traction out of it. And she put it into ChatGPT with those screenshots and not a complicated prompt, just a couple of sentences, and it on the first shot. It was beautiful. I'm going to send it to my designer. I'm going to say, replicate this. This is amazing. It's so fresh and it looks slick and contemporary, but it brings forward the best elements from the existing site. I just like, wow, this is amazing. And by the way, she noticed when right before she hit enter in the prompt that it was 111. It was 1:11 p.m. No coincidences. So I think that this is all just, we're playing a video game here, basically called reality or life. And if you're kind of more mindful and tuned in and plugged in to infinite intelligence, however you want to refer to it as, you're going to get better outcomes, whether it's with AI, whether it's with just life and relationships, with your career, anything.
Yeah. There's, for whatever reason, this this memory's been showing up recently. When I was in grammar school, we had, I went to Catholic school, and we did the singing at Christmas time, and the Christmas carols. And it sounded, if you ever seen the movie Gremlins, like it sounded a lot like Gremlins singing, just like a bunch of voices just make, right. Like it was just noise. It was just a bunch of noise. Like it must have been terrible for the nun who had actually a music background, trying to get 30 kids to sound halfway decent. But I remember at some point my voice was in the same. I think the phrase is key or note or what, like, but you heard the resonance. You heard, if anyone plays a tune, like you can, or an instrument, you know when you're in tune, when you're out of tune. And there was a resonance that I heard, and I was like, that was amazing. I was like 10 years old or whatever it was, but it was different than the gremlins just making sounds, right? And there's this resonance that happened with one other person around me, and that blinded out all the noise just for a moment, just for a second. That in tuneness with the other person just created a different experience. And I'm hearing from you that can happen with technology, with conversations, whatever it is, or else it's a bunch of gremlin sounds, and then choose your favorite gremlin sound as to where to go next. But when you can pick up the resonance of whatever it is that's more in alignment with where you need to go as the next thing that you should be exploring, and use that as your path, that's not something you can get from a machine.
Mm-hmm.
That's not something that is random. As you say, there are no coincidences around that. And that may not even be the right answer. It may not be the end result, but it's certainly something to pay attention to. And it does help to blind out all the other noise in a space, with devices that are literally addictive, that are always just trying to get your attention and extract you from the things that we should be doing. That resonance piece, if you can quiet yourself and tune into it, and learn to do that consistently over time, can change your reality, and can change, and therefore change what you produce for yourself.
Yeah. In fact, I would say that this is probably your most marketable skill in this AI era, is having that capability and really developing it.
Completely. It's I mean, back in the day, it was, yes, hard skills, Excel and Word and things, but don't forget the soft skills. It was sort of like a footnote, but don't forget the soft skills. And now we're at a point where everything we're talking about, I mean, you can get a non-designer or a non-writer to go produce something with AI, and it may not be great, but would it be usable? Yeah. Would it be a good first version of something? Closer to that than not usable these days. But then, can you work with that person? Will they respond well in a conversation? Can you co-create with that person? Can you identify when you're both onto something, and you're creating together? Those things are going to be way more important moving forward than the hard skills of yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah. So some of the other soft skills that I think are important for where we're heading, one is like one-to-one in-person communication. So if you're a good public speaker or you're a good networker, face-to-face communication, we're going to be craving that, because we won't know what is real and what's not real. It's so easy to create deep fakes that are convincing. And that's now. Imagine a year from now. So that
Yeah.
in-person component, and yeah, just being able to read the room and adapt and kind of improv your way through those in-person interactions, I think is a very important marketable skill for this new era.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I find it sort of funny in an unfunny way, that the things that we are inherently good at, human beings that we are inherently good at from a historical perspective, that intuition piece, a story piece, these things we sort of lost them along the way. We went to the keyboard, we went to the screens, and these things are highly, highly valued from a coaching perspective, from a teaching perspective, from how you show up perspective, because we can all jump on ChatGPT.
Yep.
We can all do it. Some of us better than others, but give it time, and you'll be doing it. So it's leveled the playing field for a lot of folks.
Yeah, and people used to think that prompt engineering was going to be the thing. You can prompt engineer with the best of them just by having a chat or Claude tell you what the best prompts are for the thing you're trying to achieve. And, I don't know what I need to ask. So ask whatever
That's right.
clarifying your questions you need from me until we get the right super prompt. And who needs a class or a course on prompt engineering anymore? You don't.
You don't. Yeah. I mean, just using it and repeatedly trying to get what you want is the training for it, as far as I can tell.
Yeah. But even just like, I don't have an answer to a problem and it's technical, where's the best place to go? Chat or Claude or Grok or whatever your preferred LLM is. You
Yeah.
used to go, or I used to go a lot to YouTube, but it's much more efficient to go to Grok or Gemini or Chat or whatever and get an immediate answer. And they don't have to watch a
Yeah.
15-minute video.
Right. Well, it's grabbed all that information, distilled it down into what you're actually asking for.
Yeah. Crazy wild times. Yes, yes. Speaking of interesting times, and you know the Chinese, it's like I think it's a Chinese curse. May you live in interesting times. Have you heard that before? Funny.
Yeah.
But if you could
Uh-huh.
kind of prognosticate where you think things are heading, what would be the most interesting, kind of mind-blowing predictions that you have for the next, I don't know, whatever time frame, 2 years, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Just to give you an example, I read recently Elon Musk predicts that money won't be a thing anymore in 10 years. Like it won't be a means of exchange anymore. It will be in such abundance that it doesn't even make sense anymore.
Oh, I have no idea, Steph. I don't
Tune
know.
into that intuition.
I don't know. I mean, and my come from is let everyone go do all those things. And I'll do my version of it. But the more that the world goes down the rabbit hole of asking the machines and buying robots, and and not doing their own thinking, and therefore just like don't know really how to show up as a human being,
Yeah.
don't know how to have communications as a human being, I'm going to spend my time over there.
Yeah, their brains are going to atrophy if they keep outsourcing their thinking.
Yeah, the way that I've been thinking about it recently is, social media did not make us more social. It did a bunch of other things to us. And artificial intelligence is not going to make us more intelligent, quite possibly. We're handing over our agency in many cases. I mean, the way that we get better at something is with the friction in the process of what we're creating. And what about the joy of actually creating something?
Yeah.
If you're handing everything over to a machine, you're losing a piece of your humanity
Yeah.
along the way. And at some point, it's going to hurt. And at some point, you may not even know why it does.
So, what are some things that you can do just from a practical standpoint, starting some new habits perhaps right now? What would be some things that would help you to keep that humanity, keep that creativity, the problem solving, the ability to connect dots and find patterns? That pattern recognition thing is a very important skill for our new
Yeah,
era. How do you keep that? How do
yeah,
you enhance it?
yeah, yeah. I mean, my practices include getting outside, meditation, intentionally talking with folks. I mean, it's an effort. I can spend all day behind a computer just like anyone else. I cannot talk to a human being for weeks and months on end. I mean, it's available to me to do that, but that doesn't make you. It doesn't give you a sense of aliveness. It doesn't give you a sense of satisfaction. So break away from the computer, get away. I know it's called doom scrolling, but I refer to it as death scrolling. Stop the death scrolling and put the machine down. Walk away from the screens.
Yeah.
Go outside for a little bit. Go to a zoo. Like go be around some animals and smell the smells and hear the sounds and be with people and hear what they have to say about the animals and how they call them the wrong names. And sometimes, at least that's what I saw. But there's so much available to us outside of the screen that we should be doing for ourselves
Yeah,
more so.
absolutely. One activity I'll share that has been really helpful for me is in the last, I don't know, 4 years or so, I've been journaling every day. And I don't type it up. I handwrite it, not into like a notebook or something paper, but actually into a remarkable tablet because I like it being digital, but I want to use the handwriting as a way to engage more of my brain, and it just feels better. I know I'm
Yeah.
keeping myself sharp this way, and I feel like I'm more tapped in when I'm journaling. And this is a gratitude journal where I'm grateful to God for not just the obvious revealed blessings, but the challenges too. And I write all those down, and I also write down the messages that I got or that I'm about to get, and then I quiet myself and I listen for whatever messages come in. I do that every day, and it's game changer for me. There's another nuance to it that I actually learned from Bill Donius, who was a past guest on this podcast. He is an expert at non-dominant handwriting, and it's a way to tap into your creative genius. It's also a way to tap into, like, I don't know, infinite intelligence more, or just like your higher self. When I did this exercise where he walked us through it of write down like a totem animal, an animal you really relate to. I wrote down, and he just had us do it normal. And I'm right-handed, so I wrote with my right hand. I wrote zebra, and then he had a switch, quieter mind, squeeze the pen in our left hand if we're right-handed, and then try to write it with our left hand, not worrying about how messy it is, and just let your hand write whatever the answer is. And this time, same question. I wrote humpback whale. What a
Oh, fun.
difference. And then I reflected on that afterwards, and it's like, well, the zebra is all about ego, be distinctive, be remarkable, stand out. But that's not what my soul wants. My soul is more of a humpback whale. That was really cool. So I don't know. Have you ever tried non-dominant handwriting? It's like
I haven't. I have a hard time reading my handwriting with my dominant hand. I should have been a doctor from that perspective. Um, it sounds like a variation of automatic writing. That's what it sounds. It's at least some characteristics
Mhm.
of automatic writing.
Yeah. Have you tried automatic writing before?
I have. It doesn't work for me, and I say that thinking I didn't have not given it the time that it deserves. There's other vehicles that I found just easier to pick up,
Hmm.
but there's so many tools. There's so many tools that are available to us. Automatic writing, if that's your bag, if you want to go down
Yeah.
that
Can
route, right?
we define it for our listener who's not familiar with that term?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so there's a few ways you can tap into the energy of the world, the energy of the universe, if you like, however you want to phrase it. And automatic writing is one of those ways. And like I said, I've never done it. I'm not good at it. But you just sort of just start to to make patterns on the page, and then all of a sudden things will start to come. And that's probably oversimplifying, and encourage people, if that's interesting to you, to look it up. But there's other tools you can use: meditation and yoga, and walking and standing in the grass and just being quiet. All these things have in common of being quiet, some variation of that, and breaking out of thought patterns, which is a trip. You're going to want to break the silence by having noise and start to process. And if you can start to feel whatever is that your activity is more in your body, then that's a path to what we're talking about here. You get out of the intellectual and get more into the body, and that's where the work really is.
What would be our last like wisdom nugget to share with our listener, our viewer, if they didn't take good notes for all of the stuff that we already shared? What would be, just not that necessarily this needs to even be a wrap up or anything like that, maybe even something completely out of the blue. What would be something that you want to leave our listener with as a takeaway?
Yeah. So the one of the big things that shows up repeatedly with folks when they're sort of at a point of I don't know what to do is to start someplace, and that's overwhelming. Well, what does that even mean? Choose a facet of your life. Maybe it's social, maybe it's physical, maybe it's um, spiritual, maybe it's work related. Choose a category, and then choose an action to start to go down. Do something different. Do something that you've always wanted to do without any attachment to what may come from it. The point isn't the outcome. The point is the doing. And if you continue to do, then you're going to get a good outcome. I mean, I would imagine you run into the situation as an SEO consultant, but we want 1 million visits a month. Great. I'm glad to hear it. But if we do the right things repeatedly, we're going to get a good outcome. And what we're going to get is possibly the best version for this website. It may not be 1 million visits a month. It could be 500,000. But if you try to get 1 million visits, aka attached to the outcome, you're going to start to do things to compromise the quality of that site. And we can take this as the metaphor for compromising the quality of our life. If we're stuck on the outcome, we will start to compromise what it takes to get to that outcome. If you do the right things because those are the right things, then you're going to get a good outcome that's appropriate for yourself. So start someplace with something that's exciting that you know you should be doing.
Yeah, right. So kind of an analogy to that is if you're wondering why your prayers aren't being answered, maybe God has something much bigger in store for you than you could possibly imagine. And what you're asking for is still very small thinking.
Yeah, maybe the answer was no.
Yep.
Maybe they were answered.
Awesome. Well, if our listener or viewer wants to work with you and get some coaching advice, if they want to maybe just learn from you and follow you, where should we send them?
Yeah, nickmusica.com is the coaching website. I'm working on getting a community together currently, founders group. So I'm looking for folks to join who are interested in pursuing what's next for them. If you don't know what that means for you, fantastic. That's the person I'm looking for. But you're interested in moving on it. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for the motivation to move, not necessarily, but the clarity. I don't have it. Cool. This is the place for those conversations. So if you want to go to nickmusica.com/jailbreakers, you can go there and you can sign up. Use jailbreakers as the coupon code. That'll be, we'll say, for the month of August. That there's no, as a founding member, just come and join. I'm just looking for folks to start a conversation.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Nick. This was fabulous and really inspiring. And thank you, listeners. So go out there and make the world a better place and do something innovative. We'll catch you in the next episode. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, signing off. If you want to hear more conversations like this about strategic career pivots, then I recommend episode 514 with Dustin Reichman, episode 527 with me, Stephan Spencer, and episode 538 with Dove Gordon. Also, I invite you to check out the show notes, transcript, action-based checklist, and all the URLs mentioned in this interview with Nick Musica at marketingspeak.com/548. If you enjoyed this conversation, please share the episode and, more importantly, the entire show, Marketing Speak, with a friend. It'll really help this podcast grow in reach and impact. Thank you.